wire rope replacement kit for LXPA-40 is a 10279-40 wire rope, rivet, and crimp ball. So first thing in getting the LX apart is to remove the 4 screws on the back side with your Phillips screwdriver. And once those are out, make sure to hold on to the unit, both sides of it, because it's under spring tension. When you separate these two, you have to let that spin with your hand covering it, otherwise it'll blow up. So once the spring doesn't have tension on it, before you take it apart, you want to make sure you have your fingers over this spring so it doesn't come out at you. And holding on to the spring, pulling this apart, you want to pull the spring off the rivet and then tuck it safely back inside. And now it's okay to set down. Now that you've got the spring off, you can remove the rivet and remove the capstan from the potentiometer and begin clearing the wire rope. You can then cut it, remove the wire rope from the capstan, and then remove your mess that you've now made from the transducer. Now you are able to get your new wire rope and begin installing it. Before installing the new wire rope, you want to check to make sure the potentiometer isn't broken. You're either going to have a 5-turn or a 10-turn pot, and while spinning it by hand, you'll actually make it to the end of the stops, and you just want to apply a little bit of pressure. If it doesn't go through, go back and check the other side. If it doesn't go through, you're able to proceed. If it does spin past, you're going to have to replace the potentiometer. Now we're going to install the wire rope through the housing and onto the capstan. So feed the wire rope through the housing and through the capstan. And you'll want to install the crimp ball about 60 thousandths or 1.5 millimeters onto the wire rope and crimp it with your pliers. You want the crimp to be tight enough so it holds. It'll deform the crimp itself, but you don't want to break it. Now, with the wire rope pulled all the way up into the pulley, set the pulley over the shaft so that the hole drilled in the shaft lines up with the hole drilled in the pulley. You want to insert your rivet so that the angle on the rivet is facing to your left, holding the unit in this position. And with your pliers, you want to slightly crimp it down so that the rivet is in place, but yet there's still a catch for the spring. Now, before we can install the spring, we need to wind the cable onto the pulley, which involves loosening the 3 pot screws. And we have to keep constant tension on the wire rope with your with your left hand. Hold here and rotate the pot counterclockwise while continually keeping tension on the wire rope, avoiding kinking it. And you'll wind the wire rope all the way in until the eyelet gently bumps up against the housing of the unit, and just lock 1 screw in place. That way the wire rope is wound nicely onto the capstan and the pot is locked in place with just 1 screw. Now, before you can put the spring housing onto the unit, you need to make sure that the spring catch in here hooks onto the rivet around the shaft. To do that, you're going to start with the spring in your right hand, the unit in your left, and rotate counterclockwise as you go on at a little bit of an angle, and you'll hear the spring catch as it goes over. and the spring is now on. So with the spring connected to the housing, you want to wind the spring 5 times, and then we'll install the 4 screws. Holding it in this position, you want to wind clockwise. Five times and install your 4 screws. Once the screws are installed, the unit is safe from blowing up then. The screws need to be snug, but not overly tight to where you strip the housing. Now that the spring is on, the pot is locked, and the cable is locked, so we need to set the pot, loosen the 1 pot screw you had tightened earlier, and we're going to extend the cable out and gently let it back in. Now with the cable retracted in, you can check to make sure you're up against the stop of the pot by rotating it clockwise. And we want to back it off anywhere from 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch to make sure we're not running into the stop in the pot, and tighten your 3 screws down. Now with the pot set and your 3 screws tightened down, you can check the movement of the wire rope. You want to make sure it's free from any binding.